Good day. You are welcome to the online class of GSP 1201 and 2201 Use of English from Bayero University, Kano. This is a first semester course in 2021 and 2022 session. The instructor is Dr. Idiom Ezuruike from the Department of English and Literary Studies, Faculty of Arts and Islamic Studies, Bayero University. The use of English GSP 1201 and 2201, we are going to study 7 modules, and these include the first module, which is vocabulary development, module 2, basic grammar, module 3, reading comprehension, module 4, reading communication, module 5, spoken English, module 6, summary, and finally module 7, language and styles. These are the topics we are going to learn, but we are starting with the first, which is vocabulary development. The aim of this is to focus on the need for the ways of developing vocabularies, which are essential ingredients for spoken and reading communication. And we are going to look at topics such as denotation and connotation, registers and jams, phrasal verbs, and in order to understand meaning, we need to find different ways to help us understand meaning. Aside the dictionary consultation, there are other means that will help to understand meaning, and that is the focus of one of it is by looking at the origin of the word, which is also known as etymology. By looking at the origin, it means that we are looking at the root of the word, and that will also help us in understanding the meaning. There are words known as onomatopoeic words, or the sounds which the words produce. Some words are named according to the sounds they produce. For example, the word tick-tock, or whisper, rustling, whistling. We find out that such sounds could give a clue is the root or base of a word. We can ascertain the meaning of a word by looking at the root. By root, we mean the uninflected base or the uninflected word. For example, we have the word national. National is an inflected form where the root is nation, just as we have the word active. Active is an inflected word where we have IVE as the suffix. The root word is act. Therefore, knowing the meaning of act will facilitate the knowledge of the word active. Loan words. Some words are borrowed from other languages, and when this happens, it means that languages are borrowed from a particular language and are used in English just the way they are borrowed. We have examples like cartoon. Cartoon is Italian, and we use it in English just the way they occur. That means it doesn't have an English origin. So we need to understand the meaning of the word as it is used in that language. We also have the word lute. Lute is also used in English, but it is not an English word. So understanding the origin or where the words are borrowed from will help in understanding also the meaning of the words. And these are called understanding the grammatical category of a word. Understanding that this word is a noun and not a verb will also give a hint and accelerate the possible understanding of the meaning of the. The sixth way of identifying meaning is context. Context is the environment in which a word is used. We see that this environment in which a word is used helps in suggesting the meaning of the word used. The surrounding words is also the environment in which a word is used. We can also identify the setting and the persons involved in the conversation. A word may not have a meaning or an actual meaning when used in isolation. Context is what gives the word the true meaning which is intended by the speaker. Take for instance the word treatment. Treatment has a lot of meanings based on the intention of the speaker. And it is the speaker's intention, which is the context, that helps in ascertaining the meaning of a word, of the word treatment. When we talk about treatment given to a slave or a guest, we understand one meaning of treatment. Thinking of hospital environment, what happens to a patient in a hospital, we also see another meaning of the word treatment. We purify water. When we think of the water basin, we also have another meaning of treatment. Therefore, context suggests meaning of a word. Intuition. Intuition has to do with the native speakers or the language speakers' innate or intuitive knowledge of his language. In other words, a competent user of a language has an intuitive knowledge of the language as well. This can only happen when the person or the language user is very rich or has a very rich exposure to the language he uses, and this can be done through reading and communication. Finally, we look at the dictionary. Now, we use the dictionary when every other possible means to search the meaning of a word fails. Or we can also use the dictionary to confirm what we think the word is by using other avenues which we have mentioned earlier. Now, the dictionary is actually the last resort in understanding the meaning of a word. That means it is a reference material to affirm, compare, or get a further understanding of a given word. The dictionary goes beyond word definition. It also gives other information such as pronunciation, word class, style, its relationship with other words, and its usage. The other part of the module has to do with denotation and connotation. By denotation, we see that a meaning has an actual representation in the word. That means we look at the relationship between the language and the actual word which that language represents. By denotation, we see that a meaning has to be literal. That means it is something we can see all around us. For example, using the word dog, dog, we see that it is a particular type of animal, a domestic animal, which we can find around us. Now, that is the denotative meaning. Connotative meaning is an exact opposite of denotative meaning. By connotation, we have a literary meaning or a sense meaning, where the meaning of a word is by associating the actual meaning of a given word and extending it by sense to relate it to another experience. Now, when this type of meaning occurs, we say we have a connotative meaning. For example, the meaning of dog, dog, is not actually that domestic animal we have around us, but it could be extended to some behavior which is similar to the speaker's understanding of a dog's behavior. In certain cultures, a dog could mean a promiscuous person, a dog could mean a thief, a dog could mean anything, just the way a witty person could be called a tortoise. So in this culture, two types of meaning. Now, we see that in understanding the two concepts of denotation and connotation, we can highlight the similarities and differences. One, We find the similarities because both denotation and connotation are types of meaning available to every language users. Denotative meaning identifies items in the world. For example, donkey is an animal with 4 legs, usually used for carrying loads, while connotative meaning of a donkey could mean differently to different cultures. For example, donkey could mean stupid to some cultures, donkey could mean a workaholic to some cultures. Now, looking at the differences, we see that denotative meaning is a stable relationship. That means the meaning of the word remains and does not intention. This is unlike the connotative meaning, which is not stable. Based on culture, a rat could mean differently. A duck could also mean differently. So the intention or the knowledge of the speaker of the language determines the meaning in connotative meaning. In denotative meaning, we see that there is a concrete meaning, while connotative meaning is abstract. Now we see that in denotation, we can see, feel, touch, or identify items in the world, whereas in connotation, meaning of items cannot be seen, touched, or identified. Instead, we extend the denotative meaning to express our ideas, experiences, events, or emotions. In denotative meaning also, a word may denote an item or an entity with different shades of meaning. For example, the word teacher has different shades of meaning. As such, we can use a different word for teacher, meaning tutor, a facilitator, a lecturer. Now, these mean the same but have different shades. Whereas in connotation, we associate meaning with other abstract nature or behavior, event, idea, or feeling, which has similar characteristics. For example, when we talk about woman, we think of gentility. When we talk about pig, we think of dirty. When we talk about rat, we think of thief. When we talk about owl, in African culture, we think about witchcraft. And in Western culture, we think about wisdom. Now, have different shades of meaning, also bring about incidence of synonymy in language. In other words, we say that synonym has to do with words that have similarity in meaning. In other words, this similarity is as a result of the different shades of meaning of a particular word. For example, we have rancid and sour as synonyms. We use sour for certain noun words which cannot be used for other noun words where rancid can be used. For example, we can say sour orange and we can say rancid butter. But we are not to say rancid orange or sour butter. Now we see that synonymy has to do with this kind of collocation. We also see it in the color brown. We can use brown to denote the color of our dress, the color of our book, the color of a table, but not the color of a hair. We talk about blonde hair when the hair is brown. Also, we use statesman usually for retired politicians who aren't armed or who aren't corrupt, whereas we use the term politicians for those set of people who are still in power, who we think are corrupt, and who are also still in active politics. Secondly, literary writings are known for the profuse use of connotative meanings, as seen in the literary devices such as metaphor, irony, satire, imagery, and we see examples Bat connotes blindness. So where a bat is used in literary writing, our thoughts or our thinking goes to the meaning of the bat, literary meaning of the bat, which is blindness. Thirdly, we see that connotation carries negative and positive meanings. Connotation carries negative and positive meaning. In other words, some synonyms differ in either the negative or positive implication of the word. For example, a word may be positive to Mr. A but negative to B. For example, childlike is positive to young children but negative to adults. To an adult, you can't say he is childlike, rather you can say he is youthful. By saying this, it is a compliment, whereas using childlike for an adult is more of derogatory. The same goes with statesman and politician. Statesman has a positive connotation, whereas politician has a negative connotation. The same also goes with liberty and freedom. These are also synonyms. Now we see that liberty has a positive connotation to Americans, unlike freedom, which has a negative connotation to Americans. Whereas freedom has a positive connotation to South Africans, while liberty has a negative connotation. The next part of the module has to do with registers and jargons. Jargons have two meanings. Jargons have two meanings here. The first meaning is jargons as register. By register, we refer to the technical vocabulary of a profession. As seen on the slide, we know that every trade or every profession or every field has technical terms or vocabulary that are unique to them. Now, this technical or professional use of language is known as registers. A register is very necessary and useful for members of that professional group because it is a specialized vocabulary which has to be used in their field, and it is a sign of expertise in their profession. Registers work like a professional code, thus excluding non-members from their conversations. It makes communication specific, precise, and accurate. It also promotes economy in communication. Register is a professional badge of identification of members who feel an air of authority, prestige, and high status when using registers in communication. Some professions and their registers, we can see them in the field of law, linguistics, politics, religion. The second part of the jargons are the actual jargons themselves. Jargon is an obscure and pretentious use of language. It is marked by a roundabout way of expression. It entails the use of long and pompous words which are often unnecessary and inappropriate. In other words, the speaker uses jargons to impress the audience. Now, communication suffers when jargons are used because words are barriers to understanding. To test if an expression is a jargon, the simple questions to ask are: 1. Can it be said in a simple word without impeding the speaker's intent? If the answer is yes, then it is a jargon. If the answer is no, it is a register. Finally, we have the phrasal verb and idioms. Phrasal verb is a group of words which consists of a verb and other particles. And these particles are either prepositions or adverbs, or both preposition and adverb. So we can see the structure of a phrasal verb. We have a verb and a preposition, a verb and an adverb, a verb and an adverb, and a preposition. So we can have these three structures of phrasal verbs. We can see the examples on the slide. A phrasal verb has a corresponding lexical verb, which means the same as the phrasal verb. For example, we have look for, which means to search, put off, which means extinguish, object to, which means refuse or reject, bring up. Phrasal verbs are subdivided into separable and non-separable phrasal verbs. By separable phrasal verb, we mean those phrasal verbs which can take a word inserted between the verb and the particle. For example, break down. Break down is a phrasal verb where we have break and down. Now this word, phrase, breakdown, can be separated with a noun or a noun phrase. So we can have an expression like break the topic down. So this is an example of a separable phrasal verb. The non-separable phrasal verbs are those phrasal verbs which cannot take a word inserted between the verb and the particle. For example, we have look for. Look for cannot be separated, so we can't have words like look it for or look the man for. No, it means that it is a non. Furthermore, phrasal verbs are divided into literal and non-literal phrasal verbs. The literal phrasal verbs, just as the name imply, denote a literal meaning, which are not taken idiomatically. They are actually literal. For example, look down or look up can be taken literally. That means it is either you raise your eyes upwards or put your eyes downwards. Now this is different from the non-literal phrasal verbs, which are often metaphorical or idiomatic. By looking up, look up, we can mean differently from upward gaze. Look down also can mean differently from downward gaze. So the non-literate of look up or look down could mean differently. For example, merciful. Others include hang on, which means persevere, sit up, which means to idiom. Idiom, some phrasal verbs are also idioms. An idiom is a group of words whose meaning cannot be predicted by the sequence of words in the structure. This means that idioms are opaque in nature. We can't see through the words to understand or to know the meaning of the phrase. This group of words are fossilized. In other words, they cannot be changed. Idiom therefore involves a kind of collocation where a word in an idiomatic phrase cannot be substituted with another word. For example, he kicked the bucket, and not he played the bucket or he jacked the basket. It has to be the actual words to mean what. So we have some examples of idioms here to beat around the bush. That means to avoid talking about what is important, and we are examples of idioms. To cut corners, which means doing something in an easier and least expensive manner. To boil the ocean, taking up an almost impossible or overly ambitious project. Keep an ear to the ground, which means staying informed and updated about everything. Eat like a horse, eating too excessively, a snowball effect. The aspect of momentum in every event and how they build upon each other. Now you see that there is no way the words which form the idioms will interpret or give a clue to the actual meaning of the idiom. And that is what we mean by idioms being opaque. We should also note that idioms are semantically like a single word, but do not function like a word. It does not change or take grammatical features like noun words take plural forms like car or cars, or the way verbs take tense forms like cook, cooked. In other words, to kick the bucket cannot be expressed as to kick the buckets with a plural for the bucket. To spill the bean is a wrong form of to spill the beans. In other words, the words are to be maintained the way they are used in the language and do not take any form of change. Come to the end of the first module. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening, and click to enjoy the next module. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.